The air was frigid, biting at exposed skin. 8 figures stood at the edge of the precipice, the wind whipping their jumpsuits. They were perched on the edge of the world, about to leap into the vast, unforgiving expanse of Antarctica. These were no ordinary adventurers, however. They were body gliders, daring souls who rode the currents of the air with specially designed suits. Their mission penetrate the heavily guarded no-fly zone that shrouded the heart of the continent. A silent nod passed between them, the only communication needed. Then, one by one, they launched themselves into the void. Each leap was a ballet of precision and daring. Their suits, marvels of engineering, caught the air, transforming them into human kites. They soared downwards, the icy landscape rushing towards them. The ground was a canvas of white, broken only by jagged peaks and treacherous crevices. This was a land untouched, pristine, and shrouded in mystery. A land that held secrets, whispered on the wind, hidden beneath layers of ice and snow. Secrets that these 8 souls were determined to uncover. The plane, a behemoth of metal and noise, disappeared into the distance. The drone of its engines faded, replaced by the whisper of wind and the beating of their own hearts. They were alone, specks against the vastness of the frozen desert. But their solitude was an illusion. Unseen eyes watched their every move. High above, hidden from view, the watchful gaze of the no-fly zone's guardians followed their descent. Their objective lay deep within the forbidden territory, a point on the map shrouded in mystery. The reason for the no-fly zone was a closely guarded secret, whispered in hushed tones and dismissed as conspiracy theories. But the body gliders knew better. There was something there, something worth protecting with such ferocity, something that beckoned them forward, urging them deeper into the icy heart of the unknown. As they glided onwards, the landscape began to change. The monotonous white gave way to subtle hues of blue and grey. The wind, once a constant companion, shifted, carrying with it a strange, almost electrical hum. The hum grew stronger, vibrating through their bones. It was a discordant note in the otherwise silent symphony of the Antarctic wilderness. Tension crackled in the air, a palpable sense of unease settling over the group. They were crossing a line, venturing into a realm where they were not welcome. Yet they pressed on, driven by a thirst for knowledge and a hunger for adventure. The fate of the world, they believed, might hinge on what they found beyond the veil of secrecy, and they were determined to be the ones to unveil it. The hum intensified, now a throbbing pulse in their ears. The body gliders exchanged uneasy glances. Something was wrong. Their trajectory was perfect, their glide smooth, yet a sense of dread settled over them, cold and sharp, like the air biting at their faces. Then it appeared. A shape, dark and sleek, materialized from the blinding white horizon. It was a drone, but unlike any they had seen before. This was no clunky surveillance drone. It was a predator. A silent hunter with sleek lines and menacing angles. Another drone materialized, then another, until the sky was filled with them. They swarmed around the body gliders, their movements swift and predatory. The drones were too fast, too agile. Their silent menace amplified the sense of vulnerability. They were outmatched, outgunned, and trapped in a deadly game of cat and mouse. There was nowhere to hide in this vast, empty expanse. The ice below offered no cover, the sky above no escape. The leader, a seasoned veteran named Buddy Boyce, made a split-second decision. "Scatter!" he roared, his voice barely audible above the wind. The body gliders, trained for every eventuality, dispersed in different directions. Their suits, designed for agility, twisted and turned, trying to shake off their pursuers. But the drones were relentless, their movements precise and coordinated. The game of survival had begun, a deadly dance against a technologically superior foe. The body gliders, each a lone warrior against a swarm of silent hunters, used every trick they knew to evade their pursuers. They dipped and weaved, using the wind currents to their advantage. Their bodies a blur against the stark landscape. But the drones were always there, their red eyes glowing ominously, their presence a constant reminder of the danger they were in. Through their headsets, the body gliders communicated urgently, sharing tactics and updates. Their voices, though strained, carried a sense of determination and unity. A high-pitched whine pierced the air, followed by a deafening explosion. One of the body gliders, caught in the crosshairs of a drone's weapon, erupted in a ball of fire and smoke. The others, their hearts pounding in their chests, pushed their suits to the limit, desperate to escape the deadly onslaught. They were outmatched, outgunned, but not defeated. Adrenaline surged through their veins, fueling their determination to survive. Buddy, his face grim, spotted a narrow crevasse in the distance. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was their only chance. "Follow me!" he yelled into his headset, diving towards the narrow opening. The other body gliders, trusting their leader implicitly, followed in his wake. The drones, unable to follow them into the narrow passage, unleashed another barrage of missiles. Ice and snow erupted around them as the body gliders hurtled towards the crevasse, the air thick with the smell of cordite and fear. They squeezed through the narrow opening, their suits scraping against the ice. The crevasse widened, leading into a vast cavernous space. The light dimmed, the air grew warmer, and the sounds of the outside world faded away. They had stumbled into a hidden world, a secret place untouched by the icy grip of the Antarctic winter. For a moment they just hung there, suspended in the strange, ethereal silence of their sanctuary. They had escaped for now the deadly pursuit of the drones, but they were trapped alone in a world that was as alien to them as the surface of the moon. The cavern glowed with an otherworldly light emanating from the ice itself. It illuminated a scene of breathtaking beauty. Lush vegetation carpeted the cavern floor, fed by a network of steaming hot springs. Waterfalls cascaded down the icy walls, creating a symphony of sound in the otherwise silent world. It was an oasis, a hidden paradise in the heart of the frozen wasteland. The remaining body gliders stared in awe and disbelief. It was impossible, yet here it was before their very eyes. Their initial wonder quickly gave way to a new sense of urgency. Where were they? How deep beneath the surface? And most importantly, how could they get out of this hidden world and back to their own? Buddy, ever the pragmatist, ordered a quick assessment of their situation. They were down to 4, with one glider severely damaged. Their communication systems were fried, their GPS useless in this subterranean world. They were lost, alone, and surrounded by beauty that was as captivating as it was unnerving. As they ventured deeper into this hidden world, they realized it was more than just a cavern. It was a vast network of tunnels and chambers, stretching out in all directions. The air was warm, humid, and filled with the scent of unknown flowers and the calls of unseen creatures. The silence was broken by the distant drone of the killer machines. They had found their way into the oasis. The body gliders, their respite short-lived, prepared for another confrontation, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. A chilling whine echoed through the cavern, a harbinger of their pursuer's arrival. The black drones, sleek and predatory, poured through an opening in the cavern's ceiling, their red eyes scanning the lush landscape for their prey. The body gliders scattered, their suits blending with the foliage, hoping to use the terrain to their advantage. The cavern, once a sanctuary, was now a hunting ground. Buddy, his face a mask of grim determination, led his team deeper into the network of tunnels, their headlamps cutting through the eerie green glow. The air grew heavy, the scent of exotic flowers replaced by a metallic tang. The ground, once soft earth, became hard-packed sand, then smooth, polished stone. The drones were relentless, their sensors cutting through the foliage, their weapons leaving trails of fire and destruction in their wake. The cavern narrowed, forcing the body gliders into a tight formation. The air thrummed with the sound of the drones, their presence suffocating, their intent clear. There was nowhere left to run, nowhere left to hide. They were trapped in a deadly maze, pursued by relentless hunters. The walls of the tunnel pulsed with an eerie green light, casting grotesque shadows and distorting their perception. The air grew thin, making it difficult to breathe, fueling their panic. They emerged into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center, a swirling vortex of energy crackled, bathing the chamber in an otherworldly light. The drones, hesitant for the first time, circled the perimeter, their red eyes fixated on the vortex. The body gliders had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something beyond their comprehension. But there was no time to marvel at the wonder before them. The drones were closing in, their weapons armed, their intent deadly. The drones, their mechanical hum reaching a fever pitch, swooped towards the body gliders, ready to strike. But just as suddenly they froze, their movements erratic, their red eyes flickering. They spun in place, their sleek bodies buffeted by an unseen force. One by one, they plummeted from the sky, crashing into the ground with sickening thuds. The remaining drones, as if sensing danger, reversed course, disappearing into the swirling vortex with a high-pitched whine. Silence descended upon the cavern, thick and heavy. The body gliders, their hearts pounding in their chests, stared in disbelief. What had just happened? What had caused the drones to malfunction? They had escaped certain death, but the mystery of their survival deepened the sense of unease. The air crackled with residual energy, making their hair stand on end. The vortex pulsed, its light shifting from green to an ominous purple. Buddy, his face etched with concern, urged his team towards the tunnel. They had to get out of this place, and fast. Something was terribly wrong. Their suits, once responsive, became sluggish, their controls erratic. The air grew colder, the once lush vegetation withered and died before their eyes. The tunnel, once brightly lit, grew dark, the walls closing in around them. They were losing altitude, their suits losing power. The ground rushed towards them, the promise of a hard landing filling them with dread. They had escaped the drones only to face a new unknown threat. They were descending into the unknown, their fate uncertain. Buddy fought to control his suit, his muscles screaming in protest. The air grew thick, heavy, making it difficult to breathe. The tunnel walls, once smooth stone, were now rough-hewn rock, the air filled with a fine dust that stung their eyes and clogged their throats. He glanced back at his team, their faces pale, their movements sluggish. They were running out of time. The tunnel opened up into a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadow. The air was stagnant, heavy with the smell of sulfur. The ground was littered with jagged rocks, the remnants of some ancient cataclysm. Buddy struggled to maintain altitude, his suit sputtering, its power fading fast. He had no choice but to attempt a landing. "Brace yourselves!" he shouted, his voice lost in the vastness of the cavern. His warning came too late. One by one, the body gliders lost altitude, crashing into the rocky ground with bone-jarring force. Buddy, his suit sparking, managed to right himself at the last moment, landing hard on his feet, the impact reverberating through his body. He stumbled, his vision blurring, his ears ringing. He had survived, but his ordeal was far from over. He looked around, his heart sinking. The cavern was desolate, its silence broken only by the sound of his own ragged breathing. The air was cold, biting at his exposed skin. His team lay scattered around him, their suits damaged, their bodies still. He had to reach them, had to make sure they were all right. But first he had to get out of this suit. It was heavy, constricting, and it was killing his mobility. Buddy fumbled with the release mechanism, his fingers numb with cold. The suit hissed, releasing its grip on him. He stumbled back, collapsing onto the rocky ground, his chest heaving. He lay there for a moment, catching his breath, listening to the silence. It was then that he heard it, a faint humming sound, like the whisper of the wind coming from deep within the cavern. He staggered to his feet, his legs shaky, his head pounding. He made his way towards the sound, his hand hovering over the weapon at his side. The humming grew louder, accompanied by a faint, pulsating light. He rounded a bend in the tunnel and stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes widening in disbelief. A large, disc-shaped object hovered silently above the ground, its metallic surface shimmering under the pulsating light. It was a craft unlike any he had ever seen before, its technology far surpassing anything he could have imagined. As he stared at the craft, a ramp extended from its underside, bathing the tunnel floor in an eerie white light. He felt a presence behind him, a cold shiver running down his spine. He turned slowly, his hand tightening around his weapon. Standing there, bathed in the craft's light, were three figures. They were tall and slender, their skin pale, their eyes large and black. They wore simple, form-fitting clothing that seemed to shimmer in the light. They were not human. Of that, he was certain. "Do not be afraid," one of the figures said, its voice a melodic hum that seemed to resonate deep within Buddy's chest. "We mean you no harm." Buddy, still clutching his weapon, took a step back. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and completely out of his depth. He had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something that defied all logic and reason, and he had a feeling that this was just the beginning. Fear tightened its grip on Buddy's throat. He wanted to scream, to run, to fire his weapon blindly into the eerie white light. But something held him rooted to the spot. The figure's words, though alien, held a strange calmness, a sense of authority that transcended language. His eyes darted between the three figures, their faces impassive, their movements fluid and graceful, almost otherworldly. He glanced back at the ramp, its surface glowing with an inviting warmth. The humming sound intensified, resonating with his own heartbeat. He felt strangely drawn to it, as if in a trance. His body, battered and bruised, seemed to move on its own accord, drawn towards the light and the promise of the unknown. He stumbled onto the ramp, the light engulfing him, erasing the shadows and the fear. He felt a tingling sensation, a strange lightness, as if gravity itself had lost its hold. He glanced back one last time at the cavern, at the world he knew, now fading into darkness. The ramp retracted, sealing him inside the craft, severing his last link to the familiar. The interior of the craft was surprisingly warm and spacious. The walls, if they could be called that, seemed to flow seamlessly into the floor and ceiling, emitting a soft, pulsating light. The air was filled with a subtle, not unpleasant aroma, like the scent of ozone after a thunderstorm. He was alone, yet he sensed he was being watched, observed by unseen eyes. He stumbled forward, his footsteps soundless on the smooth surface. The craft lurched slightly, then began to rise, smoothly and silently, as if defying gravity itself. He was trapped, a prisoner in a vessel of unknown origin, hurtling towards an unknown destination. He had stumbled upon a secret, a truth hidden from the world, and now he was caught in its web. He could only hope that whatever awaited him at the end of this journey was not oblivion. The craft shuddered, the soft light flickering momentarily, then came to a gentle stop. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a scene that sent a chill down Buddy's spine. They were inside a vast hangar, its ceiling lost in shadow. Dozens of similar crafts lined the floor, their surfaces gleaming under the cold, artificial light. Figures moved purposefully amongst the crafts, their forms strangely familiar, yet undeniably different. Two of the pale-skinned beings flanked Buddy, their hands resting lightly on his arms, their grip surprisingly strong. They escorted him down a ramp and onto a platform that moved silently across the hangar floor. The air hummed with an unseen energy, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. They reached the far end of the hangar, where a group of figures awaited their arrival. These figures were taller than his escorts, their features more pronounced, their eyes piercing in their intensity. They wore long, flowing robes of a deep blue fabric, their hands clasped before them. A single figure stood apart from the others, his bearing regal, his gaze unwavering. He was older, his face etched with wisdom and experience, his eyes a startling blue that seemed to burn with an inner light. This was the leader, Buddy sensed, the one they called the Elder. The Elder addressed Buddy in a language he didn't understand, yet the words seemed to resonate within him, their meaning clear. He was being accused of something, his presence here unwelcome. He tried to explain, to tell them about the drones, about the crash, about his injured team, but his words sounded foreign, even to his own ears, lost in translation. He was subjected to a battery of tests, his body scanned by strange devices, his mind probed by unseen forces. He felt vulnerable, exposed, like a specimen under a microscope. The air crackled with suspicion, his every word, every gesture scrutinized. He was an outsider, an intruder, and they were the gatekeepers of a secret world. His fate, he realized, hung precariously in the balance. The interrogation seemed to last an eternity. Time lost all meaning within the cold, sterile walls of the examination room. He was questioned relentlessly, his every word analyzed, his every expression scrutinized. They showed him images, flashed words across his vision, all the while monitoring his reactions with unnerving precision. Finally, just when his hope began to dwindle, a change swept over the room. The tension that had crackled in the air dissipated, replaced by a cautious curiosity. The Elder, his face unreadable, addressed him once more, this time his words accompanied by images that flickered across Buddy's mind. They had examined his memories, he realized, had seen the truth of his words through his own eyes. He was released from his restraints, the fear and suspicion replaced by a cool, clinical detachment. A young woman, her features soft yet strangely ageless, approached him. Her name, he learned, was Lyra. She was to be his guide, his translator, his window into this strange new world. She led him through a labyrinth of corridors, the walls alive with light and colour, the air filled with the hum of unseen technology. They emerged into a vast dome, its ceiling so high it was lost in shadow. Below them, a city of breathtaking beauty unfolded. Buildings of shimmering metal and crystal soared skyward, connected by graceful arches and glowing pathways. Vehicles silent and swift moved effortlessly through a network of aerial routes. The air was clean, the streets spotless, the atmosphere one of quiet efficiency. This was New Tera, Lyra explained, a city hidden from the world, a sanctuary for a civilization that had long ago chosen to withdraw from the chaos of humanity. Buddy stared in awe and wonder. He had stumbled upon a secret society, a civilization far advanced from his own, hidden beneath the ice and snow of a continent deemed uninhabitable. As he followed Lyra through the bustling streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had crossed a threshold, a point of no return. He was an outsider, a stranger in a strange land, and the fate of two worlds might very well rest on his shoulders. Lyra, her eyes twinkling with amusement, watched Buddy's astonishment. "It is a lot to process, I know," she said, her voice like the tinkling of wind chimes. "But know this, Buddy Boyce, you are among friends. We may have our differences with the world you come from, but we bear you no ill will." She led him through the bustling city, explaining the workings of their society. Their technology, powered by a source of energy unknown to mankind, was beyond anything he could have imagined. They had harnessed the power of nature, living in harmony with their environment, their existence a testament to the potential of a society that had transcended greed and conflict. They reached a building that seemed to grow out of the ground, its surface a tapestry of living plants and shimmering crystals. Inside, a council of elders awaited them. They sat in a circle, their robes a kaleidoscope of colours, their faces etched with wisdom and concern. "We have seen into your mind, Buddy Boyce," the elder said, his voice echoing with an unseen power. "We know of your mission, of the dangers you faced. We know, too, of the darkness that threatens your world, a darkness that would consume ours as well if given the chance." Buddy listened intently, his initial fear replaced by a growing sense of responsibility. He had stumbled upon a secret, a truth that could change the course of history. But he was just one man, a pawn, in a game he barely understood. "What can I do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The elder smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "You have already done more than you know, Buddy Boyce. You have shown us that there is still hope for your kind, that not all humans have succumbed to the darkness." He paused, his gaze piercing Buddy's soul. "But the path ahead is fraught with peril. Are you willing to be our emissary, our bridge between two worlds on the brink of destruction?" Buddy spent the next few days immersed in the wonders of New Tera. He learned about their history, their culture, their hopes and fears for the future. He learned of the ancient pact they had made with humanity, a pact that had been broken, leading to the current state of mistrust and secrecy. He learned, too, of the threat that loomed over both their worlds, a force of unimaginable power that sought to control all that existed. He trained with their warriors, honing his skills, pushing his body to its limits. He studied their technology, marveling at its elegance and power. He formed bonds with these strange, wonderful beings, feeling a connection that transcended language and culture. He came to understand that they were not so different after all. They shared the same hopes, the same fears, the same dreams for a better future. On the eve of his departure, the elder summoned him to his chambers. The room was sparse, almost austere, the only decoration a single luminous orb that pulsed with a soft inner light. "The time has come for you to return, Buddy Boyce," the elder said, his voice heavy with emotion, "but you do not go back empty-handed." He gestured towards the orb, which floated towards Buddy, stopping before him. "This is a gift, Buddy Boyce, a token of our trust and our hope. It will guide you back to your world, back to your people. But more importantly, it will serve as a beacon, a symbol of the alliance we must forge if we are to survive the coming darkness." Buddy reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and touched the orb. A jolt of energy surged through him, not painful but exhilarating. He felt a connection, a link not only to the orb but to the very essence of New Tera, to the hopes and dreams of its people. "Go now, Buddy Boyce," the elder said, his voice filled with urgency. "Time is short and much depends on your success. May the light of New Tera guide you and may the Force be with you." The journey back to the surface was a blur. One moment he was standing in the elder's chamber, the next he was back in the icy wasteland, the orb nestled securely in his pack. The wind howled around him, biting at his exposed skin, but he hardly noticed. His mind was racing, his heart pounding with a newfound purpose. He activated the beacon, and a beam of light shot skyward, piercing the clouds, a beacon of hope in the desolate landscape. He watched as a familiar shape descended from the sky, its silhouette stark against the setting sun. His team, their faces etched with relief and disbelief, rushed towards him, their voices lost in the wind. They gathered around him, their questions coming rapid fire. He held up his hand, silencing them. "There's no time to explain," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "We have to get out of here, now!" He helped them into their suits, his movements swift and precise. As they launched themselves into the air, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced back at the spot where the craft had landed, but there was no sign of their benefactors. Only the wind, whispering secrets across the ice, and a faint pulsing light, a reminder of the world that lay hidden beneath the surface. They soared through the night sky, the aurora borealis painting the heavens in a riot of colour. Buddy, his hand resting on the orb, felt a surge of hope. He had seen the future, a future where humanity was not alone. But the path ahead was fraught with danger, and he knew that their ordeal was far from over. They were returning to a world on the brink of chaos, a world that had lost its way. But he carried with him a secret, a truth that could change everything. He had seen the light of New Tera, and he was determined to share that light with the world, no matter the cost. The fate of two worlds, he realized, now rested on his shoulders, and he would not let them down. The biting wind tore at Buddy's face as they glided back into familiar airspace. The exhilarating feeling of freedom was short-lived. Below, a ring of black SUVs surrounded their designated landing zone, their headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness like the eyes of predators. Heavily armed figures, their faces obscured by night vision goggles, emerged from the vehicles, their weapons trained on the descending body gliders. They had been expected. Buddy's heart sank. So much for secrecy. He had barely touched down when rough hands grabbed him, yanking him from his suit. He landed hard on the icy ground, the breath knocked out of him. Disarmed, disoriented, and outnumbered, they were quickly subdued and bundled into one of the SUVs. The orb, tucked safely within a hidden lining of his suit, remained undiscovered. Their destination was a heavily fortified cave-like structure, carved into the side of a mountain. Inside, the air was thick with tension and the smell of stale sweat. He and his team were separated, interrogated in bare, windowless rooms. His captors, their faces hidden in shadow, demanded to know what they had found beyond the no-fly zone. Buddy, his body aching, his mind racing, maintained his silence. He knew their methods, their ruthlessness. He had seen firsthand the lengths they would go to protect their secrets. He clung to the memory of New Tera, to the hope it represented. The orb, a silent promise nestled against his chest, was a constant reminder of the burden he carried. He had to survive, had to get word to the Elder. The fate of two worlds depended on it. Days turned into nights, marked only by the delivery of bland meals and the relentless questioning. His resolve, however, did not waver. He knew his silence bought time. Time for the Elder to make his move. Time for the hope he carried to take root. He wouldn't break, couldn't break. He was the bridge between two worlds, and he would be damned if he crumbled before he even had a chance to build it. A cacophony of noise shattered the oppressive silence. Alarms blared, shouts and gunfire echoed through the compound. Buddy, jolted from a restless sleep, struggled to sit up on the hard cot. The ground trembled beneath him. Through the small, barred window, he saw a chaotic scene unfolding. A fierce firefight raged outside, figures in unfamiliar uniforms engaging his captors. The Russians, he realized, they had come. The chaos was his chance. The guards, distracted by the assault, had abandoned their posts. He slipped out of his cell, adrenaline masking his pain. He found his team in a similar state of disarray, their faces a mixture of confusion and relief. Together, they navigated the chaotic corridors, the air thick with smoke and the stench of cordite. They fought their way past disoriented guards, their movements fueled by desperation and a sliver of hope. They burst out of the compound into the blinding snow, the sounds of battle raging behind them. They were silhouetted against the backdrop of the firefight, easy targets. A sniper's bullet whined past, its sound too close for comfort. Then, one of the body gliders cried out, clutching his leg, collapsing to the ground. Buddy, his heart pounding, knew they couldn't stay. They had to get airborne, had to get back to the rendezvous point, the only place the Elder could reach them. "Go! I'll cover you!" Buddy yelled, firing back towards the compound, buying precious time. His team hesitated, their faces etched with fear and concern. "Go!" he roared, his voice raw with urgency. "Get the message to the Elder! It's our only hope!" With a heavy heart, they launched themselves into the air, their suits struggling to gain altitude in the thin mountain air. Buddy, firing blindly, felt a searing pain as a bullet tore through his shoulder. He slumped against the rock face, his vision blurring. He had bought them time, but at what cost? His hand instinctively went to the orb, a silent plea for deliverance. As his vision faded, he saw a blinding light, felt himself being lifted, carried skyward. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the concerned face of Lyra, her touch gentle, her voice a soothing balm to his pain. They were going home.